to this episode of Geeky Clinicians Podcast. Yay! So on today's wonderful episode of Geeky Clinicians Podcast, we have the honor and privilege of having Miranda Campbell as our guest, who is an attachment-based therapy guru. And so we're going to learn lots of stuff from her today. So I'm really excited about that. As always, ring the bell, like, subscribe so that you can stay abreast of all the upcoming Geeky Clinician podcast episodes. And as always, I am Dr. Deborah Dantzler, Chief Geek here at 3D Psychotherapy and Geeky Clinicians. And the other Geeky Clinicians will introduce themselves.
I am Jacinta. I am a lead counselor at 3D Psychotherapy, and I am the lead geek.
I'm Sam Tozer, and I am one of the PMRPs. So I'm geeky in that term.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mona. I am a pre-licensed geeky clinician.
Yay.
Welcome. Okay, so today, as I said, we have Miranda Campbell. And so Miranda Campbell's past accomplishments reflect her dedication to advancing trauma-informed mental health practices and her passion for making attachment-based therapy accessible to the wide audience. As an experienced therapist, she has successfully developed innovative tools, including the Attachment Style Audit, widely used by individuals seeking deeper self-awareness in relationships. Her recent book, Attachment Style Makeover, has also garnered attention and is relatable and in understanding attachment styles. And so welcome, Miranda. Thank you for joining us. We feel, like I said, privileged and honored. We know that you have lots of invitations to be on people's podcasts and have conversations. I know that you've been a frequent guest on the Burt Show and on my Sora's podcast, The Elephant Room. So it's like, oh, we've got Miranda on our show. So welcome, and please, if you want to add anything to your introduction.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be a part of this crew this afternoon. I definitely resonate with being a geeky therapist. So it's kind of cool to be a part of the community today.
Awesome. All right. So, Miranda, one of the questions we always start with our guests is, we want to know your origin story, right? We want to know your journey. So we go all the way back. Miranda, tell us about your origin story and your journey to becoming a geeky clinician, to becoming a successful clinician, business owner, all of that.
Yeah, I feel called to go like a little bit more transparent. I don't think I've ever gone this far back in answering a question like this, so you guys get it first. But, I was raised by a single mom. My dad was incarcerated when I was about 5. And so that truly did set the foundation of really, I can't put it in words and this is a part of like what I do. Like, I can't put it into words because at the age that all of this transpired, I didn't have the emotional language, right? So I still struggle a little bit with that disconnect, but I do know, I have sense enough to know that that is the foundation of me wanting to help and to pour into people that may have passed that, may not have set them up for the most secure of attachments as adults. So, yeah. So I grew up, in the church. I thankfully did have an uncle. He's a pastor who served, who kind of stepped in, filled in that gap as a father figure. And I always say that like, we just need that one person, right? And my mom was obviously really great, but she couldn't be my dad, right? But who represents and helps us learn what we identify as emotionally safe and what we want. And so with that relationship, with this, brewing just a desire to help people. I went to school thinking I was gonna be a creator of magazines. So I grew up in the era of like Teen Magazine, 17, and all the quizzes, and here we are, Attachment Audit later, but but I thought I was gonna help young girls with their self-esteem through in that medium. And it took me having a mentor in college to introduce me to sociology, and the rest is history. So here I am. It's been a fast track since then.
Awesome. Wonderful. So your origin story, very personal journey. You had some people who poured into you. You had a mentor who introduced you to this line of thinking. You said they were in the area of sociology, and it just took off. And so I want to follow up with the question of why attachment styles specifically, right? At 3D Psychotherapy, our theoretical foundation is psychodynamic. So that's why we kind of go all the way back to day one. And when we talk about psychodynamic, we often talk about the role your attachment style plays in those foundation and formation of those core beliefs. So I'm just kind of curious about how did you first discover attachment styles, and what made you fall in love with it, that this is your passion and your mission?
Yeah, well, I love helping people with their relationships. And so I stumbled across Sue Johnson and her work, and just over the years, just developed more of an affinity and just see things through that lens. So I know that there's many paths to help our clients grow and to change, but for me, it just clicks. It's just the way my brain works. So I see it from that lens, but I use, multiple theoretical orientations along that journey, whether it's CBT techniques or DBT. There we go. It's combining this too. Brain spotting, solutions focus. It's just when I'm assessing and really understanding this person and their whole being, who may be coming in for therapy because they're having issues at work or conflict with friendships or things that don't have anything to do with maybe their family of origin or their intimate partner, but it all kind of connects. So it's just my brain.
Yeah, no, I love that, because I absolutely agree. The attachment styles are so foundational in all the areas, and no matter what therapeutic techniques we're using to work with the client, there's always this kind of underlying understanding of that attachment style and how that helps them navigate through the world.
Yeah.
Awesome. Questions for Miranda?
I got plenty. So my first question, I am putting together a class on attachment and grief.
Yes.
And I am wondering how attachment styles affect how you deal with other people during the grief process.
Yeah. I totally thought you were going a different direction. I got really excited, but I still am very excited as well, because it kind of stretches me, because I never thought about it in this lens. We have our book, Attachment Style Makeover. Chapter 3 is dedicated to grieving your attachment patterns. Yeah. Oh, you have
I've got the book up on the screen.
Love it. So I can imagine that, when we're in the process of grieving, if we are securely attached, we have no problem with asking others for help, leaning on them for support, and we're most likely to expect that we're going to have a positive outcome, right? That's just the lens that we view our world based on our past experiences. But those with anxious attachment style, they really may struggle with feeling like they may be a burden. They're going to wonder why I'm not over this yet. And so it's really important for those supporting those with anxious attachment to be reassuring and to be consistent. If I have an avoidant attachment style during my grief process, I may struggle with being vulnerable, and I may isolate a lot. They're the types of people, if they're in therapy, they may go ghost for a little bit until they feel they're over the worst of it. And then they reappear and say, oh yeah, so-and-so passed. And you're like, what?
Right.
Like, let's unpack this. And like, oh no, I'm good now.
I'm
And it's
fine,
like,
right? Yeah.
no, boo. Like, and so, those who experience disorganized attachment, which is a blend of both anxious and avoidant, they may oscillate between both. They may, at times want that closeness, and at other times, need to kind of pull away because that closeness no longer feels safe. And so, again, being consistent and perhaps even scheduling times to check in with them may be helpful, so it's predictable. And just to go back, if you're supporting someone with an avoidant attachment style, perhaps supporting them on their own terms, or supporting them in a way that isn't taking away their autonomy or independence. And maybe even checking in to see if this is okay, if this feels okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's just such an important key factor of making sure that we're aware of those attachment styles and how we're supporting people through the grieving process or through grief in vulnerable moment. So yesterday was my mom's birthday. And so, which is always a hard day, and today's a hard day too. And so I know I have an avoidant attachment style. And so wanting to just, hide, disconnect, avoid, and kind of, disappear in that grieving space has definitely historically been my go-to. But, kind of that awareness, acceptance, and action of, okay, this is what's happening, and now I need to still show up and honor that part of me, but I still have to keep moving forward. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I like how you put that, like, honor that part of me that needs to disconnect for that sense of safety, but also being willing to try other ways to navigate through that, again, are at your pace and at your comfort level.
Yeah. I think being aware of your own attachment style is so valuable for everybody.
Yeah, I could imagine, like, if I'm anxiously attached and I'm trying to support you, right? And you're pulling away, you're like, girl, my shades are closed and I'm not entering the door. That really may be activating for me. That may make me feel, as an anxiously attached person in this scenario, that I'm unappreciated, or that I'm not doing it right, I'm not doing it enough. And it really that would not feel good to anyone involved. For one, I wouldn't want to make it about me, right? And so having that awareness is it's a game changer for being able to connect on a deeper level in our relationships.
Questions for Miranda?
So I have a question, Miranda. I have a friend that has a lot of trauma, and instead of addressing or when she gets upset about a situation, she detaches, she runs, but she blames the other person instead of dealing with it. And we're at this point now where she's brought it to my attention that she wants us to reconnect as friends. But how do you do that when you don't know what's going to happen or how she's going to respond? So I think that's like two questions in one, and I apologize if it is. But how do you navigate with someone unsure of their own safe space?
Yeah, that sounds like challenging on multiple levels. I can imagine that would activate things in you, but then at the same time, like, where does that put the potential of the relationship if this continues to be a problem? I don't know. I would share that dilemma. I'm open to reconnecting. I miss this, and be like honest. I think honesty goes so much further. I always think of it like a movie where, like a rom-com, for instance, where the person, if they would just say, X, Y, and Z, everything will be fine. But they're just dancing around it. They're not saying it. I'm like, just say it. Like, tell them you love them. Like, but if you would just lead with a bit of vulnerability yourself, if you feel okay doing that, and just saying, well, here's my dilemma. Like, I want to connect with you. I want to be your friend, but I'm also concerned about this. How do we forge a path forward? And just seeing what their response is. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, shoot. Say that again.
I'm scared to find out.
Yeah. I mean, you may want to do it on a day where you have the bandwidth for whichever response. But at the end of the day, their response doesn't dictate whether or not you did the right thing.
Is there anything you would recommend to assist them in processing their own attachment issues or their lack of?
Yeah. And you want me to answer this as a therapist or their friend? Because that's
either one, whichever one you're comfortable with. Whichever one you're comfortable with.
I mean, as a friend, I almost feel like you're doomed. Like there's not much you can do. I don't know. You can give them a card to a great therapist. You have a very great therapist surrounding you. You can give them my card as well. But but as a therapist on a clinical level, exploring the origins of their earlier relationships and the things that made them feel safe and unsafe as a child, because that oftentimes reflects what ends up making them feel safe and unsafe as an adult. And so to me, when you're telling me about it, I thought about the book, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And I kind of saw the friend as an externalizer, which is a natural response to having an emotionally immature parent, is to skew too far on that side of not seeing their role or their part or like the work that they could do to make a situation or relationship better. And so it's not that that's all bad, but getting them kind of to also infuse some of that internalization and that accountability would be really helpful. So as a friend, you could suggest a book like that or talking to someone through it, saying something like, I notice we go through these things in our relationship. Are you going through this with anyone else? That must be really painful to deal with that pain. Have you thought about talking to somebody? Hopefully that doesn't garner a difficult response. Some people take offense to that, but I mean, there's times where my besties will say, have you seen your therapist lately? Or have you talked to your therapist about that? What has your therapist said about that? Yeah. So, which is, those gentle nudges.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Those gentle nudges. Miranda, what gets you geeked up about this clinical work that we do? What just like when you are doing the clinical work, when you're like, yes, I love this part.
Yeah. When I guess in times when I'm working with someone and I totally get on so many levels what they're experiencing. And because of my past experiences and my book knowledge, coming together, I'm able to really not just know like what they need and like what they should do. I'm able to break it down in a practical way and like step by step. And that's what they're really yearning for. I get so many clients who say, yeah, I've tried therapy before, but I just need more. Like I need more guidance. I need homework. I need to like have action items. I need to like be able to break it down. I understand that I have this issue. Yes, I got that. Okay. I'm anxiously attached or I'm insecurely attached, but what do I do and how? And so when that starts to click, it's like just on and popping. Like it's really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Questions for Miranda?
Yes, I have a question.
Mona, then Jacinta.
Okay. My question is, as a clinician, like I've done my research and things, but I would love to hear from you. How many attachment styles are there? And based on those, that amount, what would be an example of those attachment styles?
Yeah. It depends on who you ask. how many there are. I've seen psychologists really geek out and categorize them in really good ways. To like, I really do think that there is a place for like that fine tuning or like being super specific about where you land. But at the same time, I recognize that those that I interact with may have never heard of attachment before. And I don't want the process of identifying their attachment style to be such a mountain to climb that they never really get to the point of starting to chip away at the unproductive patterns. So I narrow it down to 4 and I label them secure. And well, there's a version of me that will say secure and insecure and just call it a day. Because I have my overthinkers that are just like, oh, but then this and this. And then every week we want to talk about what did they think. And I did a Google search and it's like, girl, can we just understand that like this is insecure and you're seeking to attach in ways that are pushing people away versus bringing them in. But then generally it's secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. Some people would say the last 2 would be defined as anxious avoidant. Avoidant, fearful avoidant. And crud. Sorry, I don't use this language a lot. Fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidant. Sorry. I'm always like the last one on my list just falls on my brain. But I've heard people even dissect the avoidance even further than that. So, but just to keep it simple, I go with the first 4.
Love that. Thank you.
So I am thinking that, as therapists, we know that attachment style has a lot to do with so many of the cases that we see. And I think in many cases it needs to be addressed aside from what the presenting issue is. Can you speak to how the client's attachment style might improve the effectiveness of therapy or mental health interventions?
Yeah, for sure. Man, such a rich point. So helping your client know their attachment style can definitely help them understand the origins of kind of where their presenting issues may have come from, or just things that may contribute to their experience of whatever presenting issue they have. And I don't want to say that's half the battle, but that definitely is a very relieving part in the initial phase of therapy, of just knowing like I have a justifiable reason for acting this way or feeling this way, and really just understanding their journey, their process. But if I am able to know my attachment style and what makes me feel safe and unsafe, thus I'm able to connect better, wouldn't I be less anxious? Wouldn't I be less depressed? Wouldn't I then have a fighting chance to overcome some of the PTSD I may have from my past? So I don't know. I think that it's a cool underlying foundation to just be aware of. It's very solutions focused to me. Again, my brain just gravitates towards understanding change in this way. So
That's awesome. And I like the idea of kind of having that from the beginning, right? Which makes me think about your tool that you created, the Attachment Style Audit. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? And is it a tool that other clinicians can purchase and use? Is it in the book? Like, tell us a little bit more about the actual tool.
Yeah, it's actually a tool that you can download for free at therapistbestie.com. But I don't think we included the full version in the book just because it felt a little bit redundant in a way. But we also have an attachment style quiz. So I will say that not everyone likes the audit. And it usually is aggravating for those that like really want a clear, cut and dry response, like where do I land? And it's just more complicated than that. The audit is really a great tool if you are yourself or helping a client just increase their awareness about some of the patterns that they're experiencing in their relationships that are insecure. And so it just creates that foundation of awareness. So then they can make that decision if they want to make that change.
Okay, all right. So it'd be a good tool for us as clinicians to kind of use in our kind of intake or early sessions with clients to help with some of that discovery parts.
Yes.
Now, is it a tool that the lay public could use as well for themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. All right, wonderful. So we will definitely put that link to that tool in our show notes as well. And there's, of course, a link to where you can purchase the book as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Miranda right now? So a couple of questions that we have as when we talk, on the Geeky Clinicians podcast. And one is, what has been your biggest challenge as a clinician? What's been your biggest challenge?
So many ways I can go with that. My biggest challenge is just, yeah. I think it's varied in different seasons. I mean, obviously, we're all very aware of what it was like to go through our own struggles during the pandemic while also holding space for what felt like the world. And I think generally like that is like part of it is managing your own mental health so that you can responsibly guide and help others. That's, yeah, we'll stick to that one. I like that.
Absolutely. I definitely concur with that. Yes. Because I always say we are our instrument, right? So we're not, we don't use hammers, we don't use scalpels, we are the instrument. So if we don't take care of ourselves, then we run the risk of causing harm because we haven't taken care of our instrument.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
So, and on the flip side of that, what have been your biggest wins as a clinician?
Definitely.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, definitely writing this book. I mean, it's been on my bucket list for so long, so long. To actually have it like in hand has been such an incredible, like it still, I don't think has like sunk in. Like, oh my goodness. And like, there's more coming. So it's incredible.
Yes. And congratulations. I know that, you said you've been working on it a long time, but then to have it come out and be an Amazon bestseller.
Yes.
Yeah, so congratulations on that.
Yes. I owe so much to all the people that have like supported and had our back in putting this endeavor out. So
that's wonderful. Questions for Miranda?
I have one. So Miranda, how would you go about, or what would you share with a new clinician as it relates to attachment theory? That was the first question. And where should they start?
Yeah, for a new clinician, oh yeah, that was actually that's what came in my head. But I was like, well, dang, I don't want to like. But yes, that would actually be a really great start. And I'm not trying to be funny, but I mean, we made it for this very thing, this very purpose, not just for new clinicians, but for folks to have not just awareness of the problem, but action items and steps and tools that they could use to course correct. And so I think this is a great starting point. We definitely include cultural influences on attachment styles and origins, which I think is also very helpful because that's not always addressed in the attachment curriculum out there. So yeah, it's a workbook. So it's an actual thing, a tool that you could use. And like workbooks are, I don't know about you, but like for me as a starting clinician, like I lived by the workbooks. Those were my like my comfy safety blankets. Like they helped a lot. So yeah, to really break down the concepts, wrap your head around not just how attachment styles start, but grieving the loss of like that ideal childhood or that ideal connection that you wanted to have, and then rebuilding. So
Excellent. Any other questions?
Are there any particular exercises that you find helpful to work with avoidant or anxious attachment styles?
yes, I think techniques that actually work with all the attachment styles is boundary setting. And so we definitely have quite a few exercises in that. How do you know what your boundaries are? And how do you express them in a way that feels authentic to you in your relationships? Because that's a huge part. Like if attachment styles are rooted in like someone's fears or their sense of safety, then having healthy boundaries is a part of cultivating that sense of safety within yourself and within your relationships with everybody else. So if you are like I am, like a huge boundary queen, so it's a natural progression, like to connect the two.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. So I have a couple more, but before I even go to the next question, I'm loving this topic so much, and I think this is so rich, and there's so much more to cover. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the fact that Geeky Clinicians, which is a community for intellectually curious clinicians, we have an aspect of the community called Geeky Clinicians Academy. And Geeky Clinicians Academy is the arm that conducts continuing education trainings. And so I would love to invite you to consider being a presenter and come and do a presentation, a CE presentation on this topic. And
Definitely. Yeah. I can speak for my co-author, Jessica Harris, LPC. Hey, babe.
Yes.
But we would love to come and pour into your group. I mean, yeah, you just tell us when.
Okay, yeah. Sandra heads up the Geeky Clinicians Academy, so I'm going to make sure that she connects with you and gets all the things that we need to do and get you on the get you and Jessica on the calendar in 2025, because this is I think it's such an amazing topic and so rich and so foundational for everything.
Definitely.
Like the fact that if we can start with the person understanding that that's part of their origin story, then I feel like it allows us to do so much deeper work and maybe even a faster pace.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have things like solution focus, which is very fast paced, and of course psychodynamic, which is our heart is the slowest of everything. But I think still having that foundation is primary. I think it's awesome. So yeah. Jacinta, go ahead.
I am just wondering about using attachment theory with families who have maybe suffered some kind of collective trauma.
Yeah,
that
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I primarily work with people of color, and it's just a reality that we have in terms of just understanding how our attachment styles came about as a community. Just knowing that our parents, their parents, didn't have the luxury or privilege on investing in a lot of emotional health. It was really, rooted in survival. And so our book talks a lot about how this shows up in our communities, whether it's in a spiritual context, whether it's in a collective context, in recognizing that it's now our time to turn to heal, because many of us are having that, having the ability and, like I said, privilege to start addressing some of our emotional wounds.
Any last questions for Miranda?
I hope I answered that one. What do you think, Jacinta? Do you have any follow-up?
Well, I think it is absolutely essential to focus on the intergenerational trauma in our community. So, yeah, I like that answer.
But how do you engage those that need to address those emotions or those thoughts or those behaviors in the community and they refuse to? I know you can't make them, but how do you bring that awareness there in certain communities for them to even have a desire to want to address it?
I think we, as clinicians, we're doing that every day. Like us having this conversation, this candid conversation. We've talked about grief, we've talked about incarceration, we've talked about generational trauma, we've talked about friendships. Having conversations like that, each person that we touch individually are going back to their communities, and they are talking about what comes up in therapy, whether or not they're being explicit about, like, yes, this is what my therapist said, or they're just, our words are coming out of them to their loved ones or whatnot. Producing content like the Attachment Style Makeover, producing content on social media, like, that's how we make the change. We normalize it. We take the risk of being vulnerable in sharing, our struggles and like how we overcame and whatnot. So, but yeah, you can't force it. But if they schedule an appointment, then the rest is magic, So, yeah.
And sometimes it's just a matter of even if you talk to them and they don't agree with going through treatment, or you feel like they're not hearing what you're saying, you're still planting seeds.
Yeah. And I always say that, like, well, a couple of things. Like, one, let's imagine you're in this intimate partner relationship and your partner doesn't want to go to couples therapy or doesn't want to do their own work. There is so much power in you doing your own work yourself, because if you change, that relationship just inevitably can't be the same. Because if you two are here and you move, stuff is going to flow, has to move to flow differently that way. Doesn't mean that everything's going to be perfect, but that is a huge thing. And then, if people are resistant, it may not be productive to just ram therapy down their throat. That may not be their starting point. There are many ways to change, whether it's listening to, or at least starting or getting awareness is listening to a podcast like this one, or it could be, going to church, or it could be joining a group, that's more geared towards education versus psychotherapy. So just meet them where they are. Yeah. It's like, you may not want to go to therapy, but bro, you got to do something, because we're not staying the same, And so chipping away, because we always think about like our end goal. Like, I want to have this type of relationship, or I want to be this person, but you also have to let yourself evolve. You can't, I think I liken it, and I like food. I liken it to eating pizza. Like, I can't eat the whole pizza at once, but I can eat a slice, I can eat a bite, and that adds up. So not jumping the gun and not feeling so angsty that you have to get to the finish line immediately. There's a beauty in that process, because guess what? If I take my time, the path that I thought I was going to take, I might be able to edit it and, shifted and it may grow into something that was beyond my wildest dreams. I thought like, oh, I'm just going to put out a children's book because they're short and that's easy. But guess what? No, that wasn't the case. It was like, no, we're all like, you have this knowledge, like pour it out into an actual tool that will definitely shift and change more people for those children. So
Yeah. Wonderful. I feel like we need to have you back for a part 2, because all the things that we touched on today around kind of core beliefs and origin stories, and kind of that, it really felt like we were focusing a lot on the individual and their awareness of their own attachment style and what that looks like and means for them in the therapeutic process. But we haven't even scratched the surface on the relational aspect of attachment styles and what those two what that means when you have different people of different attachment styles kind of coming together in romantic or friendship ways and things like that. And one of the specialties we have here is narcissistic abuse recovery.
Okay.
And so this idea of talking about antagonistic relational stress, and I think it would be a great study. If somebody's out there in a graduate program, feel free to take this idea. But I would like to see the correlation between attachment style and antagonistic relational stress.
Wow.
Yes.
So can we just already invite you back for 20?
I mean, we can make a whole little series, once a quarter, we'll come back, we'll talk about attachment styles and your relationship with God or your body, or, I mean, there's just so many segues, or yourself as a leader, like how it shows up in the workplace, or, grieving parents that are still here.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so, yeah.
Yeah, this is rich.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
to the relationship with God. Wow, that's really deep.
Yeah, Jess definitely goes into that in I want to say it's chapter 1.
Okay.
So
excellent.
Skip ahead.
So Miranda, the last question that we ask all of our guests here that come on to Geeky Clinicians Podcast is, what are your best hopes? What are your best hopes for our profession, for future clinicians, for even the business side of it? What are your best hopes for our profession?
Yes. I mean, obviously there's a lot, but one that really lights me up that I dedicate a lot of energy towards is helping clinicians use their gift in a sustainable way so that they're not burnt out and that they have longevity to help as many that need to be helped. There's just not enough of us. And so, yeah, that's part of my life mission.
Yes. To keep us healthy so that we can continue to do the good work. And that burnout prevention is so key.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. I've absolutely enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for your time. And everybody, thank you for tuning in. Again, click the bell, like, subscribe, share, and check out the show notes for access to contacting Miranda if you're looking for individual therapy, if you want the audit tool, if you want to purchase the book. All of that will be in the show notes. So thank you all so much. Have a great week.
Bye.